people affected by the country's biggest oil leakage will be compensated, according to the NEA executive director. Egyptian authorities outlined plans to resuscitate the country's tourism industry. And the United States has lifted remaining coronavirus restricted international travelers. Well, these and more coming ahead on The World Today. This is Eyeafrica TV, and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin live from our studios in Banjul. I am Amadou Kante, and now the news in detail. Now, as the Intersectoral Task Force Committee set up by the government continues to investigate the cause and effects of the biggest oil spill ever in the country, oyster collectors in the affected area expressed concern over the spillage, saying it has forced them to abandon their works. Now, the executive director of the National Environment Agency, Dr. Dauda Baji, has told reporters that those affected by the oil spillage will be compensated. Mafuji Sise has the details in this report.
The National Environment Agency, Gambia Petroleum, Pura, and National Disaster Management Agency committee members have embarked on an intensive cleanup exercise of the spillage. Dr. Baji explained that the effect of the oil spillage is not severe, as some of the birds spotted at the shore were able to fly despite their wings being tainted by the heavy oil. Speaking further, Dr. Baji explained that birds would not have flown if the oil effect was severe, adding that some mangroves were also covered by the heavy oil and the already established mangroves were also affected. He said the spillage came at a time of high tide, making the water push the oil out, minimizing the damages.
Well, as I said, we all see together, and then you realize marine oysters and other things actually it's a living thing. So when they are covered with oil, naturally they have a problem. And when you look at it on the livelihood, there are fishermen, there are other people who live, women who live on this. They depend on marine for their survival. So naturally that has an impact. But as I said last time, we need to have a livelihood assessment maybe in the future after the cleanup to ensure that what is the extent of the damage, and then we see what we can do. And those conclusions will also be forwarded to the polluter and see how they can compensate them accordingly.
Meanwhile, Lamin Komma, head of coastal and marine environment at the National Environmental Agency, revealed that the area is a sensitive ecological site, as it's where oysters that are growing on the roots of the mangroves, and also an area where fish species are found, and depends on ecosystem until they are of age and move to the ocean for their survival.
Oysters are filter feeders. Filter feeders because they get in water into their system, flush it, and get the nutrients out of it. And now this the oil is stained on the prop roots of the mangroves as well as on the shells of the oysters. What is going to cause is there's going to be mortality. Mortality in such a way that the oysters, of course, there'll be drop in their production, and again there's going to be dieback on the mangrove ecosystem. The oysters, I said there's going to be a drop in the oysters, and this is going to have an impact on us in the sense that we'll not have the products that we get from the river.
Oyster collectors told Eyeafrica that many of their colleagues have stopped work since the oil spill occurred, as it has affected the mangrove swamps and made them dangerous to venture into. The women oyster collector took the opportunity to recount their current situation triggered by the over 70,000 liters of heavy oil leak into the river related to the recent operations of Gambia Petroleum. They said most women who engage in the oyster collections are now sitting at home, and that it is the same situation for oyster collectors in the riverine settlement of Mandinari, Kunkujang, Jataya, Kubune, Kembuje, Bonto and Pirang. My name is Atwanyi Jata. The oil spill has affected our lives and livelihood. The oil is stuck on the oysters. We usually clean it with our sword and it make it black. I am a native of this village, Kunkujan Jataya, and I have been working here for the past 7 years, but right now we are not into any work here since this oil spill occurred. The spilled oil is all over the mangroves where oysters inhabit, making it dangerous to have access and collect oyster for sale. Words of Janke Jata. Atonye Jata and Ambias Sanyang explained that they have been collecting oysters for more than 20 years. The duo narrate that the oil spill has made them voluntarily cease their activities, and this will have adverse effect on their business and livelihood, since from the said business they derive a source of livelihood and pays the schools of their children. They called for oyster collectors to be compensated for the damage caused by the oil spill. For Eyeafrica News, I am Mafuji Sise.
And from the report there by Mafuji Sise, moving on, Egyptian authorities are initiating measures to revive the country's tourism industry, which has been severely battered by different factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent conflict in Ukraine. Now, the new program seeks to promote locally made products to enhance women and girls to showcase their potential and build their own businesses. Tourists contribute significantly to the Egyptian economy. Here is more details of that in this report.
Bedouins have been the predominant inhabitants of the mostly desert area of southern Sinai. When tourism flourished in the 1990s along the wonderful beaches of the Red Sea, Bedouins prospered by taking over lucrative services like restaurant businesses, hotel supplies, and the popular desert safaris. But two uprisings and security instabilities followed by the coronavirus pandemic and the conflict in Ukraine have damaged the tourism sector in the last decade. What had become the main source of revenue for Bedouins has dried up, forcing the government to intervene. And officials are creating new sources of income for locals here, not only to depend on tourism, but also to encourage them to have their own businesses, small businesses to produce locally handmade crafts and products to be sold not just in this area, but also to export. NGOs moved in to offer training for Bedouin women.
Our role is to maintain the heritage and environment of the Sinai region by training women and giving them the skills to make local products. We have 9 training centers in the 9 cities of southern Sinai. We teach girls, housewives, and even graduates. We teach them handcrafts, knitting and embroidery to create job opportunities for them.
A lot of women embraced the idea and even set up their own small businesses, creating locally inspired handmade items like dresses, accessories, and home decor.
I learned at school and it was only a hobby, but recently my husband, his sister and myself participated in an art gallery in Sharm el-Sheikh, and tourists liked my work. So I took it seriously and established this small business, which has actually been my savior. When tourism was damaged, it supported me.
We learned the skills through the families that produce them, and they helped us market our products. We visited other cities and saw different styles and designs, which gave us new ideas on how to make our products more marketable.
The government is providing logistical support for these active women, but some are hoping for more exposure in major cities.
What we need is a permanent exhibition area in Cairo because it's too expensive for us to have our own outlets. Our handmade products are of high quality and are unique because they reflect our unique culture and heritage.
The initiative has proved a success. Organizers say the number of participants has tripled in 1 year, and with the tourism industry still suffering from the global turmoil, the number of Bedouin women-led micro and small businesses will continue to grow.
And that report is coming from the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Moving on, despite the adverse effects of the global health crisis, South Africa's farming industry has significantly increased employment opportunities in the country. Last year, the sector created over 50,000 jobs, while other sectors in the economy were struggling to continue operations. While young people are being attracted to venture in agriculture, operators are working on plans to sustain the new trend amid the high cost of inputs. Here is more details of that in this report.
Employment in the agricultural sector declined by 23,000 in the last quarter, but there was a 7% increase year-on-year, with 52,000 jobs created in the agricultural sector in the last year, taking overall employment close to 850,000. The gains were concentrated in primary agriculture.
We see this employment in a number of subsectors. If you look in the deciduous fruits, we had a good harvest. The citrus industry also did relatively well. But if you were to look in our oil seeds subsectors as well, sunflower seeds and the soybeans, we see some good activity there. And that's what has boosted the employment conditions, as you saw in the numbers.
So mostly in the horticulture sector, we added up 6.6% more jobs in the agricultural sector, and taking into account that we are in COVID period, that is a remarkable improvement in the agricultural job base. So with improving conditions and also improving infrastructure that should be repaired, especially the parts of KZN, we should see employment figures improving in the years ahead as production increases.
During COVID, agriculture made a solid contribution to GDP and managed to hold on to jobs, while most other sectors of the economy were cutting back.
We've seen more training going into the sector, seeing farmers retaining the best, employees, because in this environment you need, those skills to, increase production or also maintain, the current levels of, services that labor can provide. So there has been a modest improvement in the skills levels in the agricultural space.
Improved export opportunities have also helped to create and sustain jobs. In the meantime, higher commodity prices are supporting farmers hit heavily by input cost increases.
Global commodity prices are very attractive at this moment, elevated, and this will incentivize farmers to plant. But of course, one of the other challenges that everyone is stuck with is the fact that input costs are fairly high at the moment. Fertilizer prices are high, fuel prices are high. With these higher commodity prices, that does make some of the crops at least feasible to plant. We have a lot that is happening within the fruit space and the vegetable space, and we expect those to continue to do well.
The improvement in jobs is a good sign. It's also an indication that more younger people are getting into agriculture, especially with new technologies coming on board.
Now, Al-Ghazim Wan, special representative of the Secretary General for Mali, has said that although the challenges in his country are numerous and complex, they are far from being incommensurable. Now, the Mali representative made the encouraging statement at the briefing of the United Nations Security Council on June 13th. Moses Imendi has the details in this report.
Mali has become an epicenter of conflict and instability over the past decade. The war has now hit its 10-year mark this year. A military junta led by Colonel Assimi Goïta ousted an elected president in 2020, then overthrew civilian transitional leader the following year. Local insurgent groups and the Islamic State are active across central and northern Mali. Other rebel groups, communal militias, and criminal bands are also active. Al-Ghazim Wan, Mali's special representative, believes the numerous challenges in Mali are far from insurmountable despite the complexities in the country. The diplomat made the remark while speaking at a United Nations Security Council briefing.
While the challenges in Mali are numerous and complex, they are far from being insurmountable. If anything, the Malian people, as demonstrated during the Assises Nationales de la Refondation, harbor a deep aspiration for reform, transparent governance, and accountability. These aspirations and the forces driving them, including civil society, have shown great resilience and deserve the full support of the international community.
According to the Malian representative, there has been undeniable improvement in some areas and extremist groups have been weakened. But despite that, the groups still launch sporadic attacks against Malians and MINUSMA forces, as well as civilians suspected of collaborating with Malian forces. He noted that the security situation of his country is volatile and also honored the memory of peacekeepers who perished on the mission.
The security situation in Mali remains volatile and is of particular concern along the three-border area and in the center. Here, I would like to honor the memory of all the peacekeepers who have lost their lives since the inception of the mission. Their ultimate sacrifice illustrates the challenges and complexities we face and further underscores the need to ensure that the mission has the requisite capabilities, including armed and utility helicopters.
Mali's human rights situation deteriorated in 2020 amid ongoing abuses by armed Islamist groups, ethnic militias, and government security forces. 2 years on, the testimony remains the same. The prevailing security environment has compounded the humanitarian situation in the country. In 2020, 7.5 million persons will require humanitarian assistance compared to 5.9 million in 2021. The total number of internally displaced persons stands at 370,000. While more than 1.8 million people will be in immediate need of food assistance by August, the highest level recorded since 2014. El Gassim echoed the Secretary General's acknowledgement of the need for the United Nations multidimensional integrated stabilization mission continued presence and recommendation on extending its mandate for another year. The Mali war sparked in 2012 and has since caused a huge life loss and civilian displacement, with human rights abuses persistent in the country. Moses Mendy, Eyeafrica News.
And from the report there on the political situation in Mali, next to Uganda we go, where Ugandan authorities and humanitarian organizations in the country are ringing the alarm bell as more refugees from DR Congo continue to arrive in the country amid the ongoing conflict. Now, the East African nation is currently hosting more than 1 million refugees, leaving authorities worried about the situation due to the inadequate resources. Now, the Ugandan military has vowed to improve security within its borders after efforts to ease tension in DRC failed to yield a positive outcome. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Authorities estimate that hundreds of refugees have entered the country through the Bunagana border post in western Uganda over the weekend. The latest influx of refugees follows renewed fighting between M23 rebels and the Congolese government soldiers.
The situation in Congo is still very fragile. There are still fightings and people are still coming in to Uganda. Some are not here, others are in the host communities. Now, that situation has been evolving for the last 3 months.
So far, over 30,000 Congolese refugees have been registered at Nyakabande refugee transit camp in Kiso since the conflict started last November. It is some comfort for the new arrivals for now, but there remains a dire need for basic amenities.
They have to eat daily, to have breakfast, lunch and dinner. And then we also have those ones who are malnourished because they come malnourished from DRC, and we have a blanket supplementary feeding. So as the food items are going high, there's an issue of food support, which is a call to the donors.
Uganda currently hosts over 1.5 million refugees. The current crisis is already stretching relief efforts.
The focus is not only Kisoro. You have some ongoing emergency in Palabek, in Adjumani, in Kasese, in Bubukwanga, Bujibojo. Please, I think that the solution is more resources.
Humanitarian agencies continue to worry that the fighting between the M23 and the DRC government will soon worsen. The Democratic Republic of Congo has accused neighbors Rwanda of supporting the rebel activities. Rwanda has denied that. The Uganda army says it is monitoring its border to ensure its territory is safe. Calls to calm the tension between the two warring factions have unfortunately yielded nothing. Yet, the Eastern DRC crisis remains a major issue in the region.
You're watching the World Today News bulletin on Eyeafrica TV, and we are coming to live from our studios in Banjul. And from that report there, we will now take a break. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back, and you are watching the World Today News bulletin. And once again, many thanks for joining us. Now to the rest of the stories. Now, the Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, Major General Yahya Jammeh, on Tuesday presided over a blood donation activity by the Army as part of commemoration of the World Blood Donor Day at the Kanifing General Hospital. Now, the CDS acknowledged the significance of donating blood to their fellow Gambians to help save lives. The day is set aside to celebrate and raise awareness on the need and importance of giving blood and blood products to transfusions. Now, Moses Emendi has the details in this report.
Every year, countries around the globe celebrate World Blood Donor Day.
The event serves to raise awareness of the need for safe blood and blood product, and to also thank voluntary unpaid blood donors for their life-saving gift of blood. This year, the Gambia Armed Forces marked the day by voluntarily donating blood to major health facilities across the country under the theme "Donating Blood is an Act of Solidarity. Join the efforts to save lives." Major General Yankuba Drame, Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces, says the Army is the single largest contributor in the country and has championed the cause of blood donation due to its utmost importance to the human life.
It is not by definition. The Gambia Armed Forces over the years, we've been the single largest blood donors in this country. We do so with conscience. We do so with a strong conviction that we owe it to every Gambians. Giving our blood is what we can give back to every Gambians. To say we can go that extra line to give your blood so that you can survive. More so, our mothers, our sisters, the pregnant women, our sons, those that are anemic, people with traumatized circumstances. We've always been willing to come out in a large numbers to give blood.
The Army Chief also praised the Army for their act of humanity while describing their humanitarian gesture as the ultimate sacrifice they can give to their country. Safi Abia, Deputy Program Manager at National Blood Transfusion Services, indicates that timely access to safe blood and blood products is the indicator of health sector success and dwelled on the Army's rewarding efforts.
You're not only soldiers in barracks, no soldiers that defend our country or go and represent our country during wars and trying times, but you are soldiers that help in saving lives every day in our health facilities. You relentlessly give your blood, your time, anytime you're called, during rainy season or at the middle of nights, without expecting anything in return. We are always honored and always proud to say, yes, we are going to answer to the Gambia Armed Forces today, because they have always been lifesavers and always ready to give the gift of life that is blood.
According to her, blood donations have saved lives of women with bleeding disorders and pregnancy-related complications and children's complicated conditions, among others. Basiro Drame, CEO of Kanifing General Hospital, views voluntary blood donation as a way of enhancing solidarity and cohesion among social beings, and spoke of the benefits of blood donation.
We must remember that donating just 1 pint of blood can save up to the life of 3 patients. In the Gambia, one of the main causes of maternal mortality is hemorrhage, that is bleeding during pregnancy, during childbirth, or postpartum period. This can be prevented when blood is already available. So Gambia Armed Forces coming out in their large numbers every year to voluntarily donate blood is indeed a step in the right direction.
Blood donation plays a vital role in saving lives. Over the years, the Gambia Armed Forces have always responded to calls for blood donations, as acknowledged by Boubacar Sen, administrator of the Kanifing General Hospital. He described the Gambia Armed Forces action as an honorable act of selflessness. World Blood Donor Day is celebrated on the 14th of June every year. This day focuses on drawing attention to the importance of donating blood. It was first initiated in 2004 by the World Health Organization. Moses Mendy, Eyeafrica News.
On to our final story now. Now, after years of restriction, the United States has lifted coronavirus testing obligations for international travelers. The move has been welcomed by travelers thanks to the intervention of airline operators. The country's Center for Disease Control could review the decision after 3 months, and it can be reinstated if necessary. Here's more details of that. It is in this report.
Finally, liftoff for the travel industry. After months, years of disruption, one of the last remaining COVID restrictions in the US has been scrapped. Inbound passengers flying to the United States won't need to test negative for coronavirus prior to departure. The move follows intense lobbying by airlines and comes as a huge relief for many travellers who throughout the pandemic have had to pay for tests and live in fear of cancelling a trip last minute or being stuck abroad.
I had 4 extra days in London because I tested positive and needed to wait 11 days. Even though I had a doctor's note, it didn't matter. So, yeah, it was complicated.
I'm a physician. I deal with COVID patients fairly regularly, and I think it's very reasonable. The new Omicron variant is reasonably infectious, but fairly mild in its import to the individual, and it seems to be fairly well managed by the population, so I think it's gotten to the point of reasonable. Plus, I think once you let the genie out of the bag, it's out of the bag.
The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that because of the rollout of vaccines and treatments, the US can now afford to drop previously necessary measures. The impact of the pandemic, however, is still plain to see. Airline staff shortages due to outbreaks of COVID-19 and layoffs during the economic downturn have forced the cancellation of thousands of flights in recent months. And that potentially complicated situation means the CDC will reassess its decision in 90 days and stands ready to reinstate the rule if needed. But with testing regulations already dropped by other major economies, the UK, Germany, Canada, for example, the US will be hoping it can avoid reimposing those controls, especially with a busy summer season of travel ahead.
And the report there from the United States brings us to the end of this news edition. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, as ever, you can visit on our website on Eyeafrica.tv. But for now, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and bye for now.